Morning, good morning. It's so important to understand that, we're still standing for a reason. There's a reason for the season, a reason that we're still here. We have much to do. What am I talking about? Because it's really kind of difficult to come from the nightclub to the community, from the party scene to the community, and even from the church scene, if there's just not work being done, to the community. The community is the people who look like you. In America, it is just us, and we are standing alone as people have figured out ways to just harvest from the bottom. It amazes me that people don't understand what child find means here in Nevada and what the services that are happening under the requirements of the federal government to offer what would be just a free and appropriate public education. And I talk about this all the time. My son said, Mom, come on now, talk about something people, want to hear about. But guess what? Even if people don't want to hear me now, understand that this is why they shoot our children on the street, because they know that they're ignorant, they know that they're uneducated, and they know that they're not employed, and because they're not giving them any jobs. And when you can't work in your own community, when you just can't work in your own community, understand that perhaps freedom is at issue. But every year, come April, you're paying those taxes. And you are so happy to pay those taxes because nobody wants to go to jail. Nobody wants their property taken from them. And if you just happen to be making a little bit more than what most people make, you are paying some taxes. And you know that. For all of our entertainers, they pay some wealthy taxes. And know what Nipsey said on the $100,000 that he first made, what he paid. No, was it a $100,000 on the first meal? And so, but when you talk about young African Americans and how they're able to be influencers and how they're able to connect with their peers, somebody's watching. Anytime you want, if you want to come on camera, I don't care. I mean, I'll still talk, but I bounce my ideas off of my head because, it's just like when I go to bed and I'm thinking, then I watch a little bit of television, because it's only about the news. But where we are in America and where we've always been is 100% down behind the USA. Born in the USA. You don't have anything else that you can connect to except for you are just an American citizen. You are no more than American citizen. But understand, when Africans come here from America, they're in the represented group. But they have additional services called bilingual services. The federal dollars come back to your state, boo. They come back based on the count of people who live in your community in poverty. People who would qualify for neglected and delinquent. That would be the judicial system. People that are bilingual, people that are special education, because as a nation, we stand for the youngest and the neediest. But if it is not your child, and even if your child has been identified as being in need of special services, understand that this is not some kind of stigmatism. Shit is like, you need to understand, it is like having a Cadillac versus having a Pinto, because it's a Cadillac ride. When the federal government comes in to protect your rights as a citizen, they just do that. And all of the systems are established that you have the ability to advocate for your rights through the federal government, because we live under the United States of America. This happened because of the democracy, whatever that may be. You may not even understand what I'm talking about. But listen, there are Democrats and Republicans, and these things are just so irrelevant. But the Republicans come from smaller states that are empowered because there's less people. And there's less people involved in the governance structure of the monies that come back to the state under the census. And if you're not paying attention, well, perhaps you just don't even give a damn. But I promise you, it's something that you will give a damn about before this shit is all over. As we are all free, and we have the right to freedom of speech, freedom of liberty, freedom of whatever, until you infringe on the rights of others. But if you have someone that's infringing on your rights every day, I never had anybody doing publicly what these people do to you, or individuals. They just mess with your podcast, or they just mute you while you're talking, and you're just talking and people say, hey, I can't hear you. Oh, then sometimes you have to sign all the way off before you get back on. But that really comes in with a signal. You get a phone call, they want to record that too. It's a harvesting of data. Bing, bing, bing. Human capital. But I bet you don't hear that anymore, do you? Nope, because they don't want you waking up. And it's just fine when you have your children and they've been removed from you from the system, and then I bet you still owe that child support money. I bet you they're still collecting that money if you work, even if they remove your children, because you owe it to the system. It just amazes me how white women older than me, and I'm 63, have more than 9 African American children stair-step from 3 years old to 13. Because I don't know what happens to when they decide to run away if they're in the foster care system. But, the parents who adopted those children still get the money. It is the money that is concerning. It is called the harvest. And even if we're just seen to still be chattel to America, meaning that they get to choose what happens to you, but no, they'll ever get caught in a medical situation, because then they really get to choose what happens to you, because you don't understand the harvest. The states get money to provide welfare, the wealthiness or the healthiness of the person who is qualifying for the benefits for the state. And then the state has the opportunity to give grants and resources to people to help provide those services for the state. And these people, a la peanut butter sandwiches, don't look like you, but they're in your community and they're helping you to hang yourself, because they're helping you not to think about what has to happen for you to be successful in America. Because if you don't get a basic education bill and you can't articulate the King's English like myself, you ain't going nowhere. Promise you that. I just promise you that, because it's real. In America, it's all about what you're willing to do. So stand up, my friend. Understand, in America, it is just you. And it is time that we stand. And you don't have to have an organization behind you, boo. You just have to do what it is you're being challenged to do. That's what the Bible says, trials and tribulations. And when you go through these turbulent times, because they are turbulent, it is difficult to understand why a baby would take his life. It is difficult to understand why a black man would throw his baby over the balcony. But it is understandable when these black men and women are not graduating from the compulsory laws established within the state that you live, in which people are paying themselves to document how you made it or how you didn't make it. But under the pimp game, understand what Nipsey said. When he realized his mama didn't have enough money and wasn't getting enough money to feed all of them, hell, he realized that he could hustle on his own. He didn't need to be hustled by the system. So he made it work. Will you be willing to make it work? That's my question, because so many of us ain't got time for that. I'm living my best life. Ain't got time to deal with you niggas. And that's what they say. Oh, that's the word. But that's who we are referred to. And when you understand that the Underground Railroad, the documentary of, the Underground Railroad, was difficult for me to start watching. Started and just had to turn it off, because I'm not going to look at what used to be okay and is still okay undercover. Undercover and underneath what people are doing to people is not allowing them to benefit from the public education system. And this is criminal, because this dollars just flow into the state. But how many functional programs are working within your local community? And do the people look like you? And if they do, are they being funded by the federal government? Or are they just partnering without any money at all, making it work because it's a passion of theirs? And I'm one of the making it work people. I don't have to come to your meetings because I know what you're doing. I don't have to wait for you to explain to me what's happening, because I've seen it before. And in America, it is just us. And the word e pluribus unum, out of many there's one, and out of one there will be none, is our reality, because we are facing annihilation in America. Anytime that you can be a headliner on the Strip in Las Vegas, Nevada, But the children who look like you are in the penitentiary, 88% in the juvenile facilities, 49% in the foster care system. And there's another 259% of willful defiance issues on the plantation in CCSD. And that's what I see it as, because they are partnered with law enforcement. And law enforcement has a different perception when they can con you into giving up your liberty, as was in the news recently. The firefighter, I don't know his name. He was a decent looking young man, and I'm sure if an opportunity had came to him in a manner which was legal, he would have taken that too. He was just trying to make some extra money. So he was talking it over with an individual who was a decoy and was trying to set him up. And she set him up successfully because his face was all over the news. But her face wasn't on the news. Get me, somebody help me with that. I just don't understand how entertainers or superstars or millionaires are walking amongst the people without protection and bodyguards. Somebody help me with that. Because, if homeboy Henry Ruggs has had a chauffeur, well, let's understand his willful issues would have never gotten in the way and taken that young lady's life that night. But it's not a crime in the same manner as this other gentleman that was giving drugs to a 13-year-old and she died. Well, he's facing murder charges too. But when people who are legitimately operating and then they take lives, well, they're not going to jail because they have so much money. It's just different for them. And I'm sorry, in America, it is just us. Me and you, Michael said he was looking for the man in the mirror, and he found him. And he stated his case, and he died. Know that. Because he said they don't really care about us, and they didn't want him to say that. And so they showed him. And they can show you better than they can tell you. I promise you that. There are so many people in history who have died. But if we refuse to understand where we are today in this America and continue to hit the little ball on the golf course trying to get to the hole, that is the maze to me. Stuck out there in the maze, because none of that is making a difference. But of course it was making a difference for Tiger Woods, as he was making so much money, and as anything could have happened to why that car went out of control, but it wasn't his belongings. And why wasn't he just taking his chauffeur to the next space? See, it's this independence, this want to be with the regular people when you make so much money. But then you have to understand who you are in America. And it's the influencers that are making such radical changes, because people are waking up and people are searching for the wake-up call. I got it. But when somebody would choose to correct you about the use of the federal dollars, understand me, it's not charity. Every dollar is generated by the individuals within that state and whatever condition they're in. And there are obligations to that money called regulatory guidance. But when your county, over 350,000 people, would only have one Head Start and not even have an early Head Start, well, you don't even understand the ability to organize and build confidence within citizens and empower people. But when you would have such a high rate of children in the foster care system, one by one race, 49%, well, it's troubling. And I said, well, what's going on over there? And as a citizen who understands the benefit of being a citizen, I have a thought behind it. And I encourage you to have a thought behind it, whether publicly or privately, but you should have a thought behind it. You should have a thought as to why we pay taxes, and 259% of the African American children are under the willful defiance issues of willfully defiant. And what are these programs called? The Harbor, as they don't report out to the community that they are most affected by. They're providing the support. What the fuck are they doing? Curious. And I'm just saying, when they're out there begging for clothes and resources to help support these children, when Nevada has been told that they were too restrictive in their kinship and the kinship policies that they were implementing for the people who were trying to get control of their children or their grandchildren. And perhaps they didn't have enough resources, but kinship in America that was created especially for the Negro or the Native American or the Hispanic Americans that were taken at the border, kinship, meaning that if someone looked like you, they couldn't get the same amount of money as someone who didn't look like you. So therefore, we have so many other families who have adopted African American children, and we don't understand how well that's working either, because it just seems like the plantation to me, a furtherance of the plantation, a furtherance of not providing adequate services for the people in the community, which can be documented because now the federal government woke up under COVID and looked at the impact of the inappropriate use of the federal dollars and told states to clean it up. Now, in Nevada's cleanup, I can say I seen the governor on the news meeting with some black businessmen. But that didn't mean that he was holding a community meeting in which to talk about the impact of the lack of benefits and the lack of services within your community and the impact on the judicial system, as the harbor was said to have 15,000 children ran through it. That's what I heard. Maybe you should go back and listen to the Senate, do their committee meeting, and that's what I heard. When I heard the presentation on the harbor, that's what I heard, 15,000 children. Well, when I had filed my complaint against the state of Nevada in regards to what services were happening for those 15,000 children that were caught up in the harbor, and the number of children that are in the haven. And that is my concern, because CCSD, they're having some kind of community engagement meeting. I've never been engaged by them because every time I talk to one of them, they tell me it's above their pay grade. But it's not above my pay grade. So let me finish the questioning or the concerns about the harbor, because when they take children with 504s and when they take children with IEPs, well, I hope they have that data that demonstrates how those children were accessing the general curriculum just as any other child that didn't have a disability or didn't have a behavioral issue. You know what I'm saying? Equity and access is what I'm talking about. But when they don't have a demonstration of how they're engaging the black people, as they would still parade them down on the strip, and they was willingly come down there. I'm sure. There's not a performer in the world that would not want to be on the strip, because that is where the money is. When was it Celine Dion? Or I don't know, who was it that had those tickets who was going to get paid $770,000 or something like that, but a night for one performance, and then she couldn't control all of the whatever, and so she walked away from it and just returned the money. But when you make that kind of money, understand the taxes that will go into the system based on the dollars that you are generating, and know that people who live here and the property values and the property access and how they're actually using the money that's generated by all children provide service for all children, so it's equitable. And when your representatives who are speaking for you as a community would represent that, we want to make sure that all children get the benefits of the federal dollars under the AARP. And I'm saying, well, what about the children who were suffering from the learning loss prior to, because of willful issues of the state and not allowing everyone at the table? Did I say everyone? Everyone, anybody who wants to be in understanding of how they're utilizing the federal dollars. Well, this is not a not-for-profit organization, and privacy don't have nothing to do with it. But if you have not-for-profits that are getting the money, that are not living up to the requirements of the money, then I'm sorry, boo. You still need to come up with the data. I don't know how you're going to come up with the data. I don't know where you're going to find the data. But every child has the same rights to receive the same challenges as, a special needs child can go for the same degree as a non-special needs child. as just as a gifted intelligent. It doesn't matter because it's how these children are receiving the services that demonstrates their ability to go through the system. And it is about how well these children are learning and what the demonstration that the sites are providing those services. But for your children, black children, the ones who have that 259% of willful issues, which the district refused to break down as to how many children were involved in that 259% of willful defiance issues that may have disabilities. I mean, but when you have 15,000 children that have went through the harbor and the harbor reports to no one, well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Because they are under the wing of the Department of Justice. And it's just us mostly affected. And therefore, it doesn't matter. As an American citizen, you have an obligation to ensure that children who would get caught up in juvenile facilities or the willful issues are given good assessments, and you have good data to demonstrate that they learn how to maneuver through the process. And I don't understand what's going on. This is just not free money, but people would claim it. And what are they going to do with it when they're not responsible as third-party individuals, and when groups and organizations of African American people have not been trained to understand that we're only talking about the regulatory guidance, as that's the only intended purpose in the use of the federal dollars? Then, boo, everybody needed this federal lesson, as there is just regulatory guidance for every piece of the federal allocations that come to a state. And there's requirements for the data. So however they have been doing it is unacceptable. And how the committees were created and then just fall through the floor just like, oh, it was so irrelevant. That was when you were a red state, boo. And you wasn't thinking about me. But now you are a blue state. And you ain't even purple no more. Because you were so willing to give the sex trafficking, I mean, the prostitutes also got that, the prostitutes got the money for the, the CARES Act or whatever that was, the AARP or the American Rescue money. But women with lots of children that were special ed that graduated from CCSD, they didn't get none of that money. And they're not getting the child extra care money. I don't know. They're just getting whatever. Maybe they get an increase in food stamps. But they ain't getting what everybody else got. Even people with disabilities, because the federal government ensured those people got that money. But no one ensured that the state responsible people, the people who don't graduate from public school, the ones that are not making it, the ones that are system dependent, well, they didn't get that money, but they were qualified for that money. But if they never filed taxes and boo, I don't know, you just ain't been counted. But maybe you were counted in the census. And the census data has to demonstrate how many people within the area needed that type of support that you're providing. And even in the rural areas, if your people within the state didn't use their knowledge as they were hired to apply for rural schools grants, because there are rural schools grants, but I mean, when you're just the largest district of urban and rural, and how are you supporting those rural schools? When you bust down the federal dollars and they're not used for the intended purposes anymore, then you understand the consequence that has affected your people. And I ask my people to stand up, because this is 2022. We don't have any more time to waste. And if you're waiting on an organization to stand behind, understand that you just need to face that man in the mirror, which is you, and handle it accordingly. Share your concerns of these failed services, because they are just truly failed. In America, it is only you that you're waiting on. So what were you willing to do in 2022? Hey, catch my podcast, Anchor, as it's being restricted on Facebook. But I know that I can't be restricted anymore on Facebook. But even though they are limiting who might have access and know that I'm going live, they might be able to restrict that. But people somehow get what they need to get. And the universe kind of controls that, not them. It is not man. And the only reason I'm continuing to stream is because the universe kind of took care of that. It was not them. They're not doing it intentionally. But, when people would choose to restrict or oppress you, then understand that they have something to lose when other people wake up. So I will say, what are you willing to do in 22? Wake up, my friend. Know who you are and be the best that you can be, You need to be the best that you can be, because it's not all about what's happening in the box. It's how what's happening outside of the box is affecting you. And so many people are just not connected. Just not connected at all. But pimping ain't easy, and what can I say? Somebody got to do it, and they do it well. It's on you, my brother. Let's straighten up and stand up and fly right. Y'all have a great day.